BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The world's #1 men's tennis player Novak Djokovic has been denied entry to Australia to compete in the Australian Open after the authorities cancelled his visa. The tennis star was forced to spend the night at Melbourne Airport as the authorities debated whether his visa allowed him to enter the country without declaring his vaccination status. The player had previously voiced scepticism about vaccines. John Donnison reports.
If Novak Djokovic's trip to Australia was already controversial, that has now ramped up. After being detained at Melbourne Airport for more than 7 hours, the world #1's visa has been cancelled by the Australian Border Force. The player's father has told Serbian media that his son had been held captive, but he now faces the prospect of being deported. Novak Djokovic was due to play in the Australian Open and to attempt to win his 21st Grand Slam title after being given a medical exemption from the country's vaccination rules.
The president of Djokovic's home country, Serbia, has accused the Australian authorities of harassment. A Russian-led regional military alliance has agreed to send a peacekeeping force to Kazakhstan for a limited period after an appeal from the country's president. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev appealed for help to quell nationwide protests. David Bamford has more details.
Peacekeepers from the Russian-led alliance of ex-Soviet states will be sent to Kazakhstan to help stabilise the country following the mass protests. The Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who currently chairs the Collective Security Treaty Organization, said the decision to deploy the peacekeepers for a limited period had been taken in response to an appeal from the president of Kazakhstan. He had spoken of a threat to national security and sovereignty caused by outside interference. Several days of protests, originally over fuel prices, have led to government buildings and the airport being overrun by protesters.
The US Attorney General has promised to hold accountable all those involved in the deadly attack on the Congress in Washington a year ago. 5 people died after thousands of outgoing President Donald Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building. Speaking on the eve of the first anniversary of the January the 6th attack, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, said there could not be different rules for the powerful and powerless.
The Justice Department remains committed to holding all January 6 perpetrators at any level accountable under law, whether they were present that day or were otherwise criminally responsible for the assault on our democracy. We will follow the facts wherever they lead.
World News from the BBC. Prosecutors in Mexico have recommended that the former head of the state oil company, Emilio Lozoya, be charged and sentenced to 39 years in prison for corruption. Mr. Lozoya was extradited from Spain in 2020 after several years on the run. He's been accused of taking millions of dollars in bribes from the Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht. In New York, lawyers for the convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell have called for a fresh trial after recent comments made by one of the jury members to the media. The British former socialite was found guilty last month of grooming and trafficking young girls to be sexually abused by the late American financier Jeffrey Epstein. Here's Neda Taufik.
In 3 different press interviews, the juror, who asked to be identified by his first and middle names, Scotty David, revealed that he had been sexually abused as a child. Jurors were asked to disclose that information in a questionnaire ahead of their selection and to declare under penalty of perjury that their answers were true. Prosecutors highlighted that in his interviews, Scotty David said he flew through the survey and did not recall that specific question. But he added that he would have answered honestly. Now prosecutors want to hold an inquiry with a hearing on the matter in a month.
France has reported 1/3 new cases of COVID-19, its highest ever figure for a single day. The Netherlands and Sweden have also registered their highest daily COVID figures. In Italy, the cabinet has decided to introduce mandatory vaccinations for all those over the age of 50. Organisers of the Grammy Music Awards have postponed this year's annual show in Los Angeles because of the renewed spread of the coronavirus in the US. The Recording Academy and CBS Television said holding the show on the scheduled date of January the 31st would pose too many risks. BBC News.